Hello everybody, welcome to the Boxing Science Podcast. This is episode 54, another Q&A session where I answer your questions on a range of different subjects regarding strength and conditioning, sports science and fitness in boxing and combat sports. In this episode, I'm going to be answering a range of different questions that covers a range of topics, including plyometrics for boxing, how to organise your training, and this is in a few different ways. How many Zone 2 conditioning sessions to do, how many Red Zone conditioning sessions to do, how to recover from hard sparring, and how to combine your strength and conditioning and boxing sessions within the same session. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button so don't miss out on any future content, and let's get on with this week's episode. A question from Big Jesto 777. How do you choose plyometric exercises for upper and lower body? Because there are so many exercises and variations. This is a really good question and something that I've literally just filmed about in our mentorship in how to select the right exercises for your athlete. There's a range of different exercises across social media and YouTube, and it's very difficult for coaches and athletes to decide what exercises to do. And maybe we're guilty of this at Boxing Science because we share our training methods that we utilize with elite athletes, and also we share like video breakdowns on speed and power exercises. But it's very difficult in knowing exactly what exercise that would be best suited you. Let's talk about the lower body plyometrics first. If you are a beginner athlete, what's really important is that you are developing the foundations, being able to absorb force effectively before you start doing more advanced plyometrics. Now, the reason why is because when you do advanced plyometrics, you might not be able to absorb force and reproduce force effectively. This will, one, make this exercise too hard to do, so then you're not gaining that adaptation from it. But number two, this might become a dangerous exercise for you to do and might increase your likelihood of injury. So when you are first starting out on your plyometric journey, it's important to learn how to absorb force first. This is where we're using exercises such as like altitude landings, med ball altitude landings, and stuff like that to try and absorb that force first. The jumping exercises that we do are done very safely through like doing stuff like box jumps. Box jumps are a really good tool because you're learning how to express force, but you're reducing that landing forces, because obviously when you're jumping high, you're only just getting onto the box with a minimal distance. So then the landing forces are significantly reduced compared to doing plyometrics when you're jumping as high as you can and then having to absorb that force. So box jumps are used in a range of different ways, like seated box jumps with arm swing, box jumps with a med ball. In terms of developing reactive strength around the calf complex, it's important to start off with low plyometrics first, because most boxers have a low RSI value compared to most athletic populations. Using a framework by Eamon Flanagan on the Reactive Strength Index Revisited, he suggests that anyone with RSI below 2.7 should be doing low-intensity plyometrics first. So low-intensity plyometrics are stuff like band-assisted pogos, bar-assisted pogos, low pogos, and doing this for high volumes. So doing it between 15 and 20 repetitions. So we're going for more extensive plyometrics rather than doing stuff like drop jumps from a box or drop jumps from box to box. These are more intensive plyometrics. This could be a full video in itself, and maybe I'll have to do that. And as part of our workshops as well, like a Boxing Science mentorship, our Boxing Science membership as well, mainly with the plyometrics is starting off with low intensity first, start building up them foundations before starting moving on to more intensive plyometrics. Same applies for your upper body plyometrics. So something that we've covered quite recently in terms of like plyometric press-ups when looking at Ismail Madrimov's techniques, how he's expressing force through that plyometric press-up is really, really advanced. So to be able to try and replicate this, probably not going to achieve adaptation, but also might suffer from injuries at the same time. So it's important to build up that strength first through bodyweight press-ups, fast explosive press-ups, and then looking to absorb force before you start reproducing it. So doing the plyometric press-up catches and then doing banded plyometric press-ups before moving on to plyometric press-ups where you're going on to plate. So that's kind of how we do it at Boxing Science for upper body and lower body plyometrics. Okay, got a question from Toby Rama, 4253. What exercise can I do to help with soreness in my leg when I'm in my stance? So soreness might be like fatigue element, I'm guessing. Very good question. What I probably would say is think about what your stance is at the minute. It might be a technical issue. If you're feeling a lot of fatigue, you might be putting too much load through either leg. You might have a too wide a stance. You might have a too short a stance. You might be feeling quite tense through your legs rather than being light on your feet. First of all, look at your technique, talk to your boxing coach, think about how you can be more relaxed through that boxing stance. Now, if somebody has got technically quite good but is struggling with that stance, what we'd look to do is doing something like power endurance work. So doing like the 30-second max out sprints on their air bike or the repeated sprints, air bike or on the curve. You look to try and basically condition your muscles to be able to tolerate that and be able to control that as well. A specific tool that you can use if you're ticking all them boxes in terms of your stance, technical components, and also your high intensity fitness work is that you can start incorporating boxing into your conditioning circuits. So whether you're doing a red zone circuit or power endurance circuit, where you're using a range of different exercises, let's say battle ropes, med ball slams, air bike sprints, sprinting on the spot, tools that you can use for off-feet conditioning, you can put in like some shadow boxing in between there, whether that is just shadow boxing on the spot or using footwork, doing banded shadow box and stuff like that as part of your conditioning circuit. This is you getting your lower body being conditioned, putting a fatiguing scenario in that boxing stance. This can help condition you better for when you start feeling fatigued in your boxing, start feeling heavy legs, get used to that feeling of being fatigued, you're maintaining that concentration and keeping that shape. Often use this with fighters that do feel them effects of fatigue, might not be too confident in terms of their fitness. And then they're thinking, right, I need to try and improve my shape, my concentration under them fatiguing scenarios. These kind of circuits are perfect to try and replicate them feelings in a fight, to try and increase concentration, improve that shape, and also improve that confidence in terms of your fitness whilst in your boxing stance. Next question, Alexio Biago, can you pair sprints and cardio and strength conditioning together in the same session? If so, what is an optimal way of doing this? Yes, you can. And this is something that we actually do at Boxing Science. We try and separate it out as much as we can, but sometimes with training schedules and budget concerns as well, we actually pair up strength and conditioning together. Probably the only thing that I'd probably do is reduce the amount of reps or sets in the strength work and actually in the conditioning work as well. So in the strength work, I'll look to try and manage time a little bit better. Let's say for our assistance lifts, pressing, pulling, single leg work, I'll put all that together in terms of circuit, core circuit at the end and assistance lifts as well, doing our posterior shoulder, neck work and core work, all part of a circuit. And that's helping saving time, because you don't want to be spending 90 minutes on your strength work and then going into a conditioning workout as well. Same with the conditioning workout, you're probably going for your close towards minimum effective dose. So for example, our session, gold standard session, 4 minutes on, 2 minutes off. Instead of going up towards 6 repetitions, we'll probably shorten that down to 4 repetitions. 30-second max out sprints, 3 minutes off, probably only limit that to 4 repetitions rather than going up to 5 or 6. So the main thing here is just trying to manage the time, manage the volume of your strength session, and also managing the volume in your conditioning session, and you can combine strength and conditioning together. Another question from Alexo, how many times should we be red zoning and how should we space them apart? So a little bit similar question in terms of how you should space your conditioning sessions with your strength sessions apart. Ideally, you'd space your strength and conditioning and your high intensity conditioning sessions, you'd probably split them up. I'd be doing red zone running sessions or sprint interval training sessions. I'd be doing that 3 times a week, 2 times a week at a minimum. and I would be looking to space these out at least 2 days between them. So for example, our athletes at Boxing Science, they will do it on a Monday, a Thursday, and then on a Saturday. Or they'd be doing it on a Tuesday, a Friday, and then on a Sunday. So there's at least 2 days apart from each other. Next question, why do pro boxers do a full S&C session in the same session straight after their boxing? Shouldn't they have a bigger gap or do it on a different day? They can't really do it on a different day because with pro boxing, going to be training 5 days, if not 6 days a week in terms of their boxing sessions. There's no room for maneuver there in terms of like trying to do it on a totally separate day. In terms of like trying to do it straight after boxing, this is probably something that I'd encourage amateur boxers to do. Those that are going to be limited on time because they've got lack of facilities, time, money, they've got a full-time job or full-time school or college or whatever they're doing within the day. So doing S&C as a circuit at the end of their boxing sessions can be quite beneficial to do. But for a professional boxer that doesn't have them work and time commitments, they can actually space out their strength conditioning. And what I would suggest is for this to be around about 3 hours apart. That 3 hours allows you to recovery shaking, recovery snacks after training, potentially having some lunch to then fuel up for the strength and conditioning a little bit later on. If this is shorter, then we won't be able to get as much nutrition in to fuel before the strength and conditioning session. And also if they go on too long, I think might end up being a little bit tired. Spacing out their day isn't that beneficial. So I often say to our athletes at Boxing Science to have around about 2 to 3 hours between their boxing session and their strength and conditioning sessions. Okay, so a question from Hector Perez. Could you say the difference between prone and neutral pull-ups? Which is better for boxing? I've seen that most do it in a neutral grip, such as Terence Crawford, Mayweather, Shakur Stevenson, and others do it in a prone grip, such as Teofimo Lopez, Inoue, Devin Haney, or Conor Benn. Which is better? They both work in two different things. So a neutral grip is in this position. Prone grip, I'd suggest, is in this position here. Both can be quite beneficial, and it depends what you're working on. If you're looking for optimum pulling strength and lat activation, the neutral grip will be a lot better because you're having less strain on the forearms. You're able to lift more load going through the lats and being able to get a better scapular retraction to increase lat activation and to develop the upper back muscles. So going into prone position, this is going to be more beneficial for the arms. So forearms and biceps are going to be working a lot harder. You're not going to get as much activation through the lats and upper back muscles because your arms and forearms are overworking here. You're not being able to kind of squeeze them shoulder blades back to get them lats fired up. It depends what you're wanting to work. So with boxers, they need really good grip strength. So the prone pull-ups, prone grip pull-ups will be quite beneficial for that. But also we're wanting to try and increase that lat and upper back muscle strength and activation, so the neutral grips. For me, I prefer doing the neutral grips because we work grip strength in a range of different ways, whether that's doing our farmer walks, whether that's doing our reverse wrist curls, or pinch grip holds or pinch pendulums. This is how we develop grip strength here. When we're actually looking to our pulling exercise, we're wanting to try and optimize the strength and the development of the lat and upper back muscles. To answer your question, I prefer the neutral grip pull-ups, but the prone grip pull-ups do have its purpose. But if you're looking to try and optimize the upper back muscles and the lats, I'll go for the neutral grip pull-ups. JK Stings has asked how to balance strength training and boxing training throughout the week, and what is the best strength training split for boxers. So this kind of works hand in hand. For professional boxers and most boxers, like let's say amateur boxers as well, they're likely to train 5 days a week. I prefer athletes to be training in the morning. Now, the reason why is because you want to be more fresh for your boxing sessions than your strength and conditioning or your high intensity conditioning sessions. And with this, you're also enabling the strength and conditioning coach and strength and conditioning sessions to be pushed a little bit harder. If you've got strength and conditioning session in the morning and you've got boxing in the afternoon, you always got in the back of your mind that you're not wanting to be too fatigued for your boxing training. That might limit how hard you can push during them S&C sessions, and in particular, them high intensity conditioning sessions. Let's say Monday to Friday, we do our boxing sessions, put in high intensity conditioning and the strength and conditioning training. And this works alternate where we do high intensity conditioning and strength training. We then have active recovery on a Wednesday, where it's reducing that load because we're wanting to push our body, let it recover, and then go again for the back end of the week. Again, we do strength conditioning, and then we finish off for the weekend, whether an athlete is wanting to train on a Saturday or a Sunday, that's up to them. I have some athletes that train on Saturday, I have some train on a Sunday. So this is how we'll distribute training over a training week. Great question here. In your last podcast, you gave an example of an extended warm-up, which consisted of things like plyometric jumps, landmine punches, med ball punches, etc. Would it be okay to have these type of exercises as a full session itself? If so, what types of exercises would you need for a full body approach? We use extended warm-up, such as like the counter movement jumps, box jumps, paired with like ice skaters, and then going into a punch-specific action, such as a landmine punch throw, medicine ball punch throw. The reason why we do this and keep it as part of the program is because we've got this terminology called residual gains. And residual gains is how long can you leave a certain training type without diminishing returns. So, for example, strength training. Once you get a strength training block, you can go for 30 days without training maximum strength and still be able to maintain maximum strength. So this means that from 4 weeks out from a fight, we drop our maximum strength training, work more towards strength, speed, and explosiveness. With speed training, this has a limited window of between 3 and 5 days. So that's the reason why we keep it in the program for so long. So if an athlete comes in wanting to develop their speed, power, and explosiveness before their fight, if we just go right 2 or 3 weeks out from their fight, then working on speed training, and they haven't trained that for 10, 12, maybe even 15 weeks because they worked on it in the last camp, they're going to be a little bit behind in terms of their speed strength qualities. So that's the reason why we keep that as an extended warm-up all the way throughout training camp. We're keeping speed as part of the program. So we keep it as part of the program, then it becomes the main part of the program 2 to 3 weeks out from a fight, where we're looking to transfer them gains of maximum strength and power into fast explosive actions, the actions that look more like the sport. How we put that into an actual training block is through our speed and power workouts that we share on social media and on YouTube, where we're looking at like basically replicating our model. We'll do a lower body exercise, we'll do upper body push and pull, we'll do a single leg exercise, and then we'll do some sort of core work. With this, what we'll do, we'll replace them heavy loaded exercises to fast, more explosive exercises. So we'll do a loaded jump, whether that's a trap bar jump, a banded accentuated jump, or some sort of like dumbbell jumps in there. We'll put that as part of their main session, and then we'll do a push and a pull. So that might be a landmine punch throw, or maybe like towards the back end of camp, a medicine ball punch throw. With a pulling exercise, we'll do this more functional. So rather than doing a heavy loaded prone row, we're likely to do like a single arm row and rotate. We can do this on the cables, we can do this on the kettlebell, we can also do faster variations as well. And then for the single leg work, we're likely to do dumbbell step ups with the band, or doing it without any dumbbells when we're just doing banded explosive step ups. Then we can put this as part of a circuit with some of our rotational power work, whether that's a rotational med ball throw, rotational med ball hook, or med ball rotational slam. So this is how these exercises now become part of the program. They're the extended warm-up all the way through training camp to keep speed part of the program, keep improving speed, and then really try and maximize and try and transfer them strength and power gains into faster, more explosive actions and transfer that into a punching action. Thomas Wade, 221. How to keep fit on holiday as a boxer? You've got to think like, when is this period? Is it part of a training camp? Are you 5 weeks out from a fight? Or are you going after a competition or going after a fight? Now, if you're going after a fight, it's not really too confusing. All you've got to do is just stay in the gym, try and do some energy expenditure, work on your mobility, just do something to just keep ticking over. You don't have to do like red zone runs. You don't have to do heavy weighted strength sessions. Just do something to keep your body ticking over. Your body's been working hard. You've been through a camp where you've had to make weight. You've had to go into a fight. Your body needs that chance to recover. You can't just keep going into the gym all the time. But at the same time, what you don't want to do is totally switch off, reduce that training load too much, and then also eat too much, which I know a lot of you boxers like to do, and then end up having a large energy intake and a very, very low energy expenditure. With this is where we see athletes come back into camp a little bit too heavy. Enjoy the food, enjoy the time off, but do a little bit of something to try and tick over. So doing something like recovery runs is good. Keeping the heart rate below 80% of your maximum heart rate. So we call this the green zone. This will be very good. Instead of just doing a long, steady plod, splitting this into intervals. So maybe doing 4-minute intervals, 2 minutes, maybe even going all the way to 30-second intervals where you're increasing the speed, but also keeping your heart rate quite low. And this is what's going to prepare you better going into training camp. In terms of your strength training, doing lighter loaded exercises, maybe some higher volume work, doing some more kind of functional work as well, working on your rotational mobility, working on hip mobility, working on more functional exercises. This will be more beneficial and getting your body prepared going into the next training camp. Now, let's say you are a fighter that has booked a holiday in advance, but then you've got a fight date. Let's say you've got it in 5 weeks' time. What you're looking to do is try and keep up your training intensity and that volume whilst you're away on holiday. Now, this is really vital to do because if you see a big dip in your training load and then you go back up into training camp like the next week, let's say you've dropped the training load, your weight goes up, you're then wanting to try and make up for that and have a high training week when you get back, that spike between training loads, that's where an athlete can end up becoming overtrained, become ill, might end up being injured as well. Have a deload week, have a planned deload week, but also manage your training load going back up. Doing your boxing sessions, doing your conditioning sessions, your strength sessions, do it as a deload week. We need to make sure that you're monitoring that training load. The easiest thing to do is to do duration times RPE. So 60 minutes times RPE between a scale of 1 to 10. So let's say that's an 8 out of 10. This gives you a training load of 480. This is accumulated over the week. And what you're wanting to do then is give yourself some training goals for the next week to then increase it by only 20%. So anything more than 20%, this can increase our likelihood of illness, injury, and fatigue going into the next vital stages of training camp. Okay, next question. Your thoughts on steady state cardio like zone 2 cardio. I know you spoke briefly about it before, but just like you to elaborate more on if you think fighters should do it, and if so, what should the training dosage be? So when we're talking about zone 2 training, this is like said to try and improve aerobic endurance and aerobic capacity. The thing is with zone 2 training, it's quite understimulating for boxers because we do a test called the lactate profile where we're looking at how an athlete responds to increases in intensity. And what we're actually looking for their aerobic capacity work is to be under 4 millimole per litre. Now, because a boxer is really fit aerobically, their lactate threshold actually comes quite late in the test and their heart rate is actually quite elevated. It's actually gone to pass zone 2, past zone 3, and potentially going up to zone 4, going into the orange zone. So the last thing that we want to do is be training in zone 2 because that is well away from where our aerobic threshold is, our lactate threshold is. We're actually wanting to keep the speed a little bit higher and potentially have the heart rate's a little bit higher. So instead of zone 2, what we look to do is go to zone 3. So instead of the blue zone on your heart rate monitor, we're more looking towards a green zone, just under 80% maximum heart rate. With this, we've got that training intensity to optimize aerobic capacity and also able to increase energy expenditure. Now, how often do we actually use this? We only do this either once or twice per week. More often, we'll only do it once per week. The reason why is because the amount of training that we'd have to do to try and stimulate some adaptation would be weeks and weeks and weeks of work. Whereas like we've only got an athlete in for 12 weeks. So we're wanting to do the training that's going to have the highest amount of adaptations and also the training that's going to replicate the demands of the sport. So that's why we do our 30-second sprints, our repeated sprints, and our red zone conditioning work, because these are the kinds of intensities that our athletes are going to be expected to do on a repeated basis in their boxing. But also this is what's going to help stimulate higher amounts of physical adaptation in a very short amount of time. Whereas like with the more endurance work, you're only going to see a very small adaptation over a longer period of time. And also, it doesn't replicate the demands of the sport. In terms of our aerobic endurance work, zone 2, zone 3, whatever you want to call it, we only do that for active recovery once or twice per week. We like to put it in the middle of the week to help reduce that training load, that training strain, and also to try and increase some calorie expenditure to help with the weight making process. The only reason why I'd end up doing it twice per week, if an athlete is struggling in terms of their fatigue levels, we might have to swap a high intensity session with a recovery session. Also with athletes that potentially might be struggling with their weight class. With zone 2, zone 3 work or aerobic endurance work, beneficial, but it's not the be all and end all. Now, this has actually been shown with recent results that we've had with our athletes. We've seen that they've improved in their aerobic endurance based off the lactate profile without doing much active recovery sessions, much zone 2, zone 3 work at all. We've been predominantly doing sprint training, sprint interval training, and this has helped improve their lactate profile and reduce their heart rates at different speeds. So this is representation of them improving their aerobic capacity. So hopefully that's answered your question. Keeping it very simple, we do aerobic endurance work just once a week, purely for active recovery and maybe to help with athletes losing weight. So a fantastic question here, quite interesting. How to formulate an S&C drill with an unreliable knee or unstable knee. I've got a cousin that wants to box and his knees aren't the greatest. He can drive, uppercut and hooks no problem, providing he has a knee brace. We utilised a lot of your work in Ontario, Canada, and would love to hear your take on the matter. Cheers and have a good week. Thank you very much. So if you're struggling with your knee stability during a hook or an uppercut, this is quite common in boxing, and not to the point where you get in pain, but to the point where it ends up being like a bit of a technical flaw where an athlete is kind of over rotating during this action. Now, there's a range of different things that you can do from a generic point of view and also a specific point of view. Let's start with generic. So an athlete can end up getting poor knee stability in boxing just because like an athlete is more knee dominant and they have a lack of glute strength, and in particular glute med strength. So the glute med is the glute that sits at the side of your hip, and that adds to kind of that knee stability. So if you find your knees that are going in, you might be tight in your adductors, so that's your groin muscles, and weaker in your abductors, which is your glute med muscle. So what you're wanting to do to try and keep that knee stable is to try and improve that glute strength and also try and improve the flexibility of your groin muscles. So that's why we use exercises such as a lateral lunge to try and open up the hips, and then use exercises to try and improve glute strength, such as a single leg glute bridge, a single leg hip thrust, and different variations of the single leg hip thrust, but then also looking at the glute med isolated. So that's why we do the banded side steps. That's why we do the banded side clams. We'll do a range of different exercises that look to try and improve the glute med strength, whether that's doing ice skaters, a offset reverse lunge. This can all increase activation of the glute med and provide some knee stability. Then you're looking at more specific work. So looking at like kind of rotational work. So you can do a med ball rotational throw in a split stance. And the challenge is being able to absorb and reproduce force in that rotational action whilst keeping your lower body stable. So you're keeping that lower body stable through a faster action, and this can transfer into your knee being more stable during bent arm shots. And then you can look to do med ball punch throw with a lead hook. So with this, you're going into your med ball punch throw, going into that lead hook. If that knee is flaring out, and you're not creating any stability through that front knee, you'll end up over-rotating and not being able to get as much power through that lead hook. So there's a range of different strength and conditioning exercises that you can use. From a boxing point of view, try and slow down your technique, maybe take that knee brace off to start feeling more comfortable and confident within that knee, because all you're doing with that knee brace is just diverting the pressure away from that knee. And you're not actually training your body to be able to keep that knee stable during boxing. Once you get a little bit stronger through these exercises that I've suggested, take the knee brace off, slow down, have a look at your technique, maybe do some video analysis and looking how your knee actually flares out during punching. Look to try and fix that hip, fix that knee during a punch specific action. And then in the long term, you're going to feel much better, much more stable knee during your bent arm shots. Okay guys, so that's the end of the Boxing Science podcast. Thank you very much for watching. If you are not subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content. If you like the video, hit that like button so you support the growth of the channel. We can bring you even more content in the future. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully see you on the next episode of the Boxing Science podcast.